right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Aaron King, and I'm chair for the NBNA Men's Health Committee. And I just wanted to welcome you all today to the conversation, Empowering Black Men and Conversation about Trauma-Informed Care. So before we started, I just wanted to touch on a few things. I am a proud lifetime member of the National Black Nurses Association. This is an organization that was founded in 1971 by Dr. Sams, former dean and professor of the nursing school at Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama. We have grown and grown for a group of, I want to say, 20 women, and we now have over 200 chapters nationwide. I'm a proud member of Capital City Black Nurses Association here in Sacramento, California. Along with myself, we have the Men's Health Committee co-chair, Mr. soon-to-be Dr. Josie Perpignan from the Greater New York Black Nurses Association. So our Men's Health Committee actually came together to really focus on Black men's health topics. NBNA has long been a pillar for representing Black health across the nation, the U.S. And so the Men's Health Committee started with many events, but its first event was in 2019 in New Orleans at the conference. We did a Bow Ties Men's Health event, which coincidentally focused on mental health and trauma-informed care. So it's great that we're back together. We're really wanting to do more virtual events to really stamp ourself here in the space. But the committee itself came together and was the brainchild of Mr. Kendrick Clack. And so I wanted to take a time to acknowledge the work that he's done in really building a platform for Black men's health within the organization and really uplifting other voices to really focus in on men's health, or Black men's health specifically. So this event was really put together by Dr. LaDanya Patterson. She is an assistant clinical professor at Nell Hodson Woodruff School of Nursing at Emory University. She's the co-founder and program director for the High School to Higher Education Pipeline Program. This program, which is the sponsor for our event, was developed by both Dr. LaDanya Patterson and Gia Daniels to facilitate the entry into the nursing profession for Black men or Black males. The goal is to provide mentoring, guidance, and resources needed to get Black male high school and college students on a trajectory to attaining a successful career in nursing. And so really big applaud to the work that they're doing. So I'm going to get straight to it, and I'm going to be introducing Dr. Wesley Wills. He'll be our moderator for this event, and I'm going to read his bio. The seed of helping others was planted as Wesley witnessed his mother's passion as a foster care social worker with the Division of Child Welfare. He began volunteering with the same department during his high school years. Upon graduation from Talladega High School, he was inspired by his family to enter the field of nursing and earned his associates in applied sciences with a major in nursing from Central Alabama Community College in 2000. During his undergrad, he was inspired further by several dynamic and fascinating professors in the Department of Social Work while attending Alabama State University, where he obtained his Bachelor's of Social Work in 2002. It was from these professors' interest, investment, and encouragement that he went on to pursue and complete a master's in social work at the University of Alabama in 2003. He later obtained a Master's of Science in Public Safety from Auburn University in Montgomery in 2004. As he gained professional experience, Wesley continued his education in human development, obtaining his doctorate of psychology from Argosy University in 2010 and a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing from Herbert Lehman College in Bronx, New York in 2011. He started his own practice, RHIO Wellness, Reflective Healing, and Inspiring Outcomes in 2010 with the goal of meeting the holistic mental and physical health needs with a practice in the District of Columbia, New York, and New Jersey. He is licensed in the professions of psychology, clinical social work, and nursing. So I now take the time to introduce you all to Wesley Wills. Go ahead, brother.
Thank you so much, Dr. King. I'm very excited to moderate this conversation tonight. It's one that has been very close to my heart for quite some time since SAMHSA introduced the concept of trauma-informed care. So I'm going to introduce our two panelists. I'm going to start with Dr. Obari Cartman. Dr. Cartman is a father, son, brother, uncle, thinker, writer, therapist, photographer, drummer, and grassroots mental health advocate. He is a Chicago native where his cultural and educational foundations were cultivated by several African-centered institutions. He received his undergraduate degree in psychology from Hampton University and a PhD in clinical and community psychology from Georgia State University. His recent work includes being a trauma-focused clinician, a restorative justice coach, and program evaluator with HELP LLC, Healing, Empowering, and Learning Professions. Dr. Cartman has served as a professor of psychology at Georgia State University and the Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies at Northeastern University. Dr. Cartman recently created a male rites of passage curriculum called Man I Fest that is being implemented in juvenile detention centers, schools, and other community settings across the country. Dr. Cartman is the former program director for Real Men Charities Incorporated, where for 3 years he facilitated weekly men's wellness and African drumming circles and was the associate editor of the South Side Drive magazine. Dr. Cartman is the immediate past president of the Chicago Association of Black Psychologists and curator of a directory of Black mental health providers. As a consultant, Dr. Cartman facilitates trainings for adults and workshops with youth about maintaining mental wellness, critical analysis of hip hop and media, racial and cultural identity, developing authentic manhood, and healthy relationships. Dr. Cartman is currently completing his second book about Black spirituality, which will be released this year. Thank you so much, Dr. Obari Cartman.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great. And our second panelist is Mr. Mr. Chevis Johnson. Mr. Johnson is a violence prevention professional, VPP, with the UC Davis Health Wraparound Program in Sacramento, California, and has been with the program since it was created in 2018. As the program's first VPP, Chevis worked closely with hospital administration to develop and implement wraparound at the UC Davis Medical Center, a level 1 adult and level 1 pediatric trauma center. He led program efforts to integrate wraparounds, frontline workers as valued members of the hospital's healthcare teams for violently injured patients. With 20 plus years of violence prevention and intervention, Chevis has remained a staple in his community. Chevis' main goal is to help others find hope and purpose in life through relationship building and mentoring. Welcome, Mr. Chevis Johnson.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to I guess we're going to jump straight in there. The first question I have is for you, Dr. Cartman. Can you share a little more about Manifest or Man I Fest and the other work that you are doing in your community?
Yeah, absolutely. Manifest is a hip hop based wellness curriculum. We using music, lyric, pop culture to just go in to try to engage the TikTok brain. It's got to be fast. It's got to be interesting. But what we're doing is to have deep, relevant, critical thinking conversations about all the things that men are dealing with, just relationships and consent and politics and history and economics. Every unit is a range of topics that we use facilitated prompts to just go into spaces where, where Black men are. Unfortunately, a lot of the work is in incarcerated spaces. But, we do in high schools, we in community centers, just trying to take the medicine to people. It was a while ago when I realized that my version of psychology was going to be different than I was trained to do. Like, I couldn't sit in the office and wait for people to come talk to me one at a time. We really need to find innovative, creative ways to give the messages. I think probably early in my career, I would do flyers or I do community events, and I would have like, hey guys, come talk about your feelings. And then, men did not show up. Men didn't want to come share and find the safe spaces. And so, that curriculum was just my attempt to try to bring content to them and make it as engaging as possible. It came out of a book I wrote about 10 years ago, Conversations for Young Black Men About Manhood and Relationships, where it's all, the same idea is just that as men, I think we have an obligation to share what we've learned and create spaces to have a pipeline of a process of young men into manhood and understanding that they're doing that against obstacles. They call them ops, right, in Chicago, but they think about somebody right down the block. But we thinking about systemic obstacles to their development, to their wellness, to their hopes and dreams. And so I think it's our obligation to do as much as we can to go connect with them, share with them, learn from them, create spaces where we can really just build together, strategize, and have wellness at the center of it, but also think about the fight, the attacks, the generations of goals that we have to really win this thing from a perspective of the power that we have that I think a lot of young people are distracted by and have forgotten. And I think that there's ways that we as the people are losing that those connections between us and the young people is a central sort of pillar in my strategy for community advancement. So that's the curriculum is. If anybody interested in learning more about that, it's certainly got more information, but just wanted to share that from the beginning. I appreciate you asking about that specifically.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for, again, that work you're doing. Mr. Johnson, can you describe your role as a violence prevention professional and the impact that you have had in the community while serving in this role?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, my job as a violence prevention professional is working in a hospital-based violence intervention program. I meet with individuals after they've been shot, stabbed, or assaulted from the ages of 13 to 30 years old, and just meet with them at bedside, kind of start building rapport with them and really figuring out if there are specific needs that they need help from the community. So with that, after they get discharged from the hospital, I come alongside them as a mentor and connect them to as many different resources as possible. We create a case plan where we talk about whether they have educational goals, employment goals, family goals, mental health goals, whatever it happens to be, even legal issues. We kind of get all those things together, and it's really a wraparound approach. I partner with a lot of different agencies. One of the biggest agencies that I partner with is our Black Child Legacy campaign, which was created in Sacramento to decrease Black child death. We have 7 different sites in the 7 highest incidents of death neighborhoods around Sacramento. I actually sit on the multidisciplinary team committee for the Oak Park site, which is actually where our hospital is located. And we meet every week. We have people from Job Corps, from social services, people from DHA, Department of Human Assistance. We have everybody pretty much underneath the sun that kind of comes to the table, and we can really look at each individual case, see where they need support at. We even have probation at the table. So even if there's individuals who may have already had some law enforcement contact, sometimes, well, most of the time we can get those individuals onto the caseload of our specific probation officer who we work with hand in hand with, and we can really see their cases through, even child support, all types of different needs that our patients and clients are having. We're able to kind of bring to the table and help them find solutions for it. We also help them fill out victim of crime applications so that they can get compensated for their injuries. For those who are working, get compensated for their lost wages and things of that nature, and really do everything that we possibly can to kind of alleviate some of the pressures off of them while they're trying to recover from their injury physically. We also have mental health resources. We're actually in the process of hiring on a new mental health support here in our program, but obviously as part of our hospital system, we have other mental health supports that we currently are connecting them with. And we also have supports in the community if individuals would prefer to visit with somebody in the community. So we do whatever we can to go try to go above and beyond to connect individuals with the resources that are out in the community, as well as what we have in-house to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks.
Thank you. Just so we are, so our order of business also, by the way, everyone in attendance, please feel free to drop questions in the chat. We will hopefully get time to answer those questions. But so that we can kind of provide a framework of what trauma-informed care is, it's become pretty much a buzzword, so a lot of people know. However, several years ago, SAMHSA introduced this initiative because there was a great deal of information coming about in terms of how we as healthcare professionals and individuals who interface with different populations coming in and out of the either healthcare environment, church environment, wherever we are, that have had significant experiences that inform who they are. At one point, I felt like there was quite this one-stop shop. When you come into the emergency room, I remember being an emergency room nurse. What is the chief complaint? What is your, and basically you would say, what's your problem? And that's kind of being the face at which, or the message at which patients were being met with, and that we weren't getting all of the information that we needed. So SAMHSA has labeled the 4 R's to trauma-informed, well, 4 R's that kind of justify why that we need trauma-informed care. So one is to realize the widespread impact of trauma and understand the potential paths for recovery, recognize the signs and symptoms of trauma in clients, families, staff, and others, respond by fully integrating the knowledge that we have about trauma into our policies and our practices as providers, and then resist. So resist using any practices that can re-traumatize the individuals by which we serve, the individuals and populations and communities by which we serve. So that's kind of the 4 R's of SAMHSA. And I'm going to jump right in with the question of, for either one of you, Dr. Cartman or Mr. Johnson, how can trauma affect Black men's experiences in healthcare environments?
I'll start. I got it. This is a lot. The things that I do appreciate the last couple years of focus on trauma-informed care, healing center care, there's different sort of packages for it. But the idea is really to help bring a level of contextual compassion to the individuals who are seeking help. And I think that's a good thing. That being said, I think that there are always going to be holes, missing elements of the analysis and the experiences of Black men and Black people, period, in this country, as long as the people who are crafting the policies and the interventions are not us. There's a certain level of understanding of what we need to heal ourselves that has to come from the community, from the people who have experienced the trauma. And there are certain things that America cannot heal because it caused the trauma itself. And there's a level of reliance that we've become dependent upon of the expertise that comes from the academy and from the licensing processes, from the places that a lot of us work, that have good things but can't have all of it. They inherently cannot have the solution to some of the problems we've experienced because they are rooted in the power structures that maintain themselves, which include profiting off of some of the pain we experience. And so I add to what SAMHSA offered a level of historical trauma that Black people have experienced in a very unique way as descendants of the most heinous, vicious crime against humanity that we've ever seen, that was never repaired or restored. We're still fighting for reparations. We're still healing from some of the wounds that have transferred generation to generation. America can't heal that because it created and continues to profit off of it. There's a cultural trauma. I'm reminded of it just right now when you called me Dr. Cartman. It comes with a level of like reverence and esteem, but I never forget that my last name is a badge of dishonor for me and my family. That sometimes I feel ashamed for still carrying the legacy of the enemies of my ancestors in my name, in the names of the days of the week. And I can't look at the stars without seeing Mars and Venus and thinking about gods and goddesses from ancient Roman, Greek, you know what I'm saying, pantheon. I live on Jefferson Drive. Every time I write my address down, I'm paying homage to a terrorist. Like everything about our world is defined by, is consumed with a foreign, violent culture that we have to adapt to in order to succeed in this place. And there's trauma at every level of that. Every step of the way, there's things that we experience that are traumatic, that are painful, that are disorienting, that disconnect us from our true selves. So part of that healing has to include a repair of those things that were taken from us as a function of what it meant to create a class of servants perpetually. So embedded in the frame in psychology, I got a PhD in white psychology. I had to read a whole bunch of white men, Freud, Skinner, and I had to master somebody else's framework. We speak in their language in this moment in order to be able to maintain success in this place. And I lose a lot in that process. And there's trauma, all of it. Everything, every piece of that is trauma. We just recently, about a couple of years ago, got an apology from APA, the American Psychological Association, for acknowledging their contribution to the harms that they have misused science for to perpetuate systemic inequities, the inherent deficiencies in people. They have misused their science to make it seem like they are superior, and that, and we kind of just are trying to compare ourselves to them. Um, that apology is nice, but like the policies and the monopoly they still hold on the licensing process and the insurance world and the diagnosis is still embedded in a power structure that we, you know what I mean, we depend on. So I say all that to add, when you say what does it got to do with Black men, then we gotta have our own separate conversations, develop our own analysis, have a different frame of reference for what trauma, healing, humanity looks like, and it can't just come from them. We have to think about what does it mean to go beyond the American story, the American mythology, the power structure that is designed to maintain itself, and think about trauma from a lens that includes race, culture, and our ancestral obligations to those that we owe a debt to. It might be more than you asked for, but
No, thank you so
first thing that
much.
comes to mind.
No, thank you so much for that. And Mr. Chavez?
Man, Dr. Barr, that was a mouthful.
That wasn't my
Still,
fault. I know as
no,
I'm saying it, like this is a lie. Hold
I'm
on.
I'm still downloading some of the stuff you said. But to add a little bit from just being in this hospital environment, I've only been working here since 2018, so just a little over 6 years. The system itself is really set up for Black males to fail a lot of times. A lot of times, the first person you meet as you walk through the doors is either a security guard or a police officer, and that in itself can just be traumatizing. Um, Black males are looked at differently. We've had instances where, like, we'll have instances where individuals will come in with a gunshot wound. They can be 15 years old, but because they're a big Black kid, they don't want to put them in a pediatrics ward. They don't want to put them on a pediatric floor. They want to put them in an adult floor. Well, if they go to an adult floor, it's much more difficult for them to get the pediatric services that they need, And so it's my job to kind of help bridge that gap, understand that, hey, well, why is this 15-year-old, why is this 16-year-old over here and out on the pediatric floor? Talk with whoever I need to talk to, hopefully get them moved to a pediatric floor, but if not, at least get them the resources that are in-house that should be available to them. It does a disservice not only to the patients, but also to everybody else who's working here. There's a lot of good people trying to do a lot of good work, but the systems that are in place sometimes can just negate all that. And even myself, like, I don't dress like a social worker. I obviously don't look like a police officer and stuff like that. But even building that rapport, I have to let the individuals know that, yes, I do work for this hospital system, but I'm your advocate. I'm here for you. And if you're not being treated right, I need to know so that I can go to bat for you. And unfortunately, there's not an advocate for everybody at our hospital, especially for every person of color at our hospital. And it's only a small population, the violently injured population that I work with. And I think once we really start to see individuals as people and start to humanize them, then we can start making more advances. But right now it's kind of like, this is just another patient that's come through. And again, once law enforcement or somebody gets involved in it, it creates a whole nother layer and level of responsibility, or sometimes from the hospital's point of view, lack of responsibility, because they just kind of give everything to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This is definitely a great segue into two questions. First one for you, Dr. Obari, is the question of where would we find this apology from the American Psychological Association?
It's on their website.
Right.
You can go to the website. They have a really useful timeline on the website, apa.org, that has a detailed list of some of the ways that they are identifying instances of misuse, of harm. They'll show you research that they put out that, and these aren't like crazy fringe psychologists. These are like the president at Harvard that are putting out research and saying that the Native Americans was less than and deficient. And it would be documented moments where we would be superior on a test, we have a faster reaction time, and they would interpret it as we are inherently deficient because we are more like mammals, we more primitive. That's why we faster than them. So even when we win in, they're misusing it to say that we closer to animals than humans, and then that goes into policy and that justifies everything that America funds to treat us like what Chevis is describing, which is not a full human, not deserving of full care. If somebody coming into the trauma unit because they got gunshot, there's already a image that you got in their brain of why they got shot, what they were doing to get shot, and then that creates a story of what they deserve, what they're worth. And we in a real tough moment as Black men. Like there's a mixed conversation of like the redemption, the redemptive policy possibilities of Black men, but it's still very much a quick to judge and discard culture that we in. Um, just I've had my own personal instances where like I've been very surprised how easy it is for somebody to say the most ridiculous thing and how easy it is to believe the worst possibilities about what a Black man has done and capable of. And then the first response is just, throw them all away. And I think that we experience in that culture, and then we internalize that, and then that adds to our sense of value, our sense of worth. And so then we coming in with that, and then the system responds to that. And so then we getting it inside and outside. And then we ask why men don't go to the doctor. Because we got the historical memory of Tuskegee, and we got the day-to-day experiences of the trauma we experience just by being alive. Then we eat it and we internalize it, and then we showcase it in our rituals. If I don't believe I'm worth it, then I'll just eat garbage and poison. Like you wouldn't put, you know what I'm saying? We treat our shoes and our cars better than ourselves because we see them as valuable. When you see a thing that's sacred, then you care for it, you tender, and you spend time in protecting it. But we don't see ourselves in that way. And then all of that means, you know what I'm saying, finally get so bad. In my world, for a therapist, you gotta be, you know what I'm saying, real bad before you call somebody. So Chevs is in people after they literally got to be shot before they come to the doctor. And still in that case, the first thing that happens is you try to find an individual diagnosis. What's wrong with you? Somebody coming to seek help and they trying to find out what's wrong with you. And they've already built on top of that, just internalized something wrong with me, something wrong with me. And then my insurance company requires that as soon as they walk into my door, I got to give them an individual diagnosis. At no point does anybody explain that the system is sick, not you. At no point does anybody say that the whole thing is broken. It's not you. Right. And so then we had this idea that like everything I see is chaos and violence, and this just must be what Black people are. This must be how we live. This must be what we deserve. And the science has done everything to support that, psychology and all the rest of them. So that's what Black men have we up against a lot. And until we sort of rectify some of the root causes of these things, we just kind of administering band-aids. We kind of dealing with coping and managing sickness. We're not really healing or transforming ourselves.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Obari. Mr. Johnson, we have a question for you. They were wondering about the success rate for gunshot trauma program in terms of violence prevention. And how much has the violence decreased since the start of the program that you are part of?
So I'll start out by saying, anecdotally, violence has gone down. From a research standpoint, we can't prove that, hey, our violence intervention program has helped drive violence down. What we can prove, though, is that individuals who have been violently injured and come through our program don't get violently injured again. And I would say that's since 2018. So over the last 6 years, we've only had one individual who's been violently injured a second time, and no other patients of ours have been violently injured again. So that's a commitment to the success that we have for our program, the commitment that we have to our individual clients and patients. I think for the majority of the people, obviously I can speak for myself, for the majority of people that I work with, what I really try to focus on is three different things: identity, purpose, and legacy.
Right.
They have to understand who they are.
Right.
They've been told there are a lot of different things. They've been given a nickname, whether it be from family, from their neighborhood, from society. They've been told all kind of different stuff, but they don't even understand who they truly are at the core of their being. So we have to get back to that first. Once we get to that and they can understand who they truly are, then we can start talking about, well, what are you here for? What is your purpose in life? What are you good at? What do you love? Especially for some of our older adults that we deal with, like, what was it that you really fell in love with when you were a kid? That somebody told you that you were never going to be able to do. I don't care if it was being president, whatever it happened to be. What is it that you really had a passion for? Or what is it that you have a passion for now? How can you use that to not only help yourself financially, but help your community? How can you give back? Now that you understand that you do have a purpose. And then with that, what are you going to leave behind when you dead and gone? Like, if you run in the streets, they're not going to name a street after you because you got shot on it. That's not what they're
Right.
doing. you know
Right.
that because you're selling as much drugs as you want to sell, or you got as many women, whatever it happens to be, all this negativity that you've been seeing in your past, none of that stuff's going to mean anything when you're gone. What can you do to leave behind a legacy to where people can be like, oh, this is the Johnson Library. You know who Mr. Johnson was? Oh, he's the one who came back. He got out of prison. He cleaned up the community. He's the one who started all these schools. He's the one who started this community center. Like, what are you going to leave behind? What are your kids going to be able to remember about what you did in their life and the time that you were here for them? And so those are the three kind of pillars that I try to work with all of my clients on, making sure, again, understanding their identity, what their purpose is, and what kind of legacy they want to leave behind.
Thank you for that, Mr. Johnson. I really appreciate this question where you stated that you asked to the person that you're serving, like, what is the one dream that you thought of as a child? One thing I think we do well and we don't do so well in schools of nursing is we prepare nursing students to become nurses. We don't necessarily prepare them to be client-centered. So we oftentimes, new nurses, I wouldn't say need a script, but they need a framework for how to ask questions. Because I remember as being, again, like I said, a new nurse, I'm reading what's on the paper because I started nursing before we had electronic health records. So I'm just reading the paper and this is what I'm saying to the patient. And that's kind of like my script and what we kind of go through. And now that we have this trauma-informed care and we're moving away from like, what's wrong with you, to kind of like a more scripted kind of way of saying, well, what happened to you? What happened to bring you into here today? And allow the patient to tell us that whole story. So I really appreciate that you provided that kind of like, just like literally clear black and white way of asking something that can really speak to the patient and let you know you're listening to them.
That's true.
So what other trauma-informed strategies and programs have either of you implemented or being involved with to promote overall health and well-being of Black men?
I started with sort of the analysis. The analysis is the part of the trauma for Black people specifically had to do with the removal of our rituals, our culture, our language. And so as a therapist, I had to consider, what does it mean to heal in a way that includes putting those things back in place. And so, so we doing drum circles for real. Like we doing comedic yoga. Comedic yoga, which is different than just like Bikram yoga, because it allows us to say the names of ancient Kemetic gods and goddesses and think about what the legacy of what our ancestors left that is still scribed on the walls of pyramids, that we had people who had an ingenuity that could build for eternity. And then there's a wisdom embedded in that. We talk resilience, but we talk about generations of legacy being left. What does it mean to go back and fetch some of those things and to reintegrate some of those things? I use hip hop as a modern expression of ancient philosophies and practices. We celebrated the 50 years ago. Last year we celebrated 50 years. But I think about the 50 years being a new iteration of an old expression of an African art form that includes rhythm, storytelling, the oral tradition, call and response. These elements of what hip hop sort of turned into is sort of an American amalgamation of things that are very old for us. We got old stuff in us. We got the trauma in our DNA. Epigenetics is showing us the ways that trauma gets passed down. But we also got brilliance in our DNA. We also got some genius in our DNA. And so part of the trauma-informed healing practices includes unlocking those things, evoking those things, practicing some of those things that at one point we had an enemy that was clear enough to how powerful our drums were, how much medicine was in our drums. They outlawed it. They cut your hands off. They found you, I'm saying, if you find you reading, if they find you speaking your language, if they found you doing ring shouts, there's things that somebody saw as medicine and power they had to take from you. It wasn't that we forgot over time. It was violence that removed us from these practices. And so part of my practice is to bring it back, is to put it right back center into the therapeutic space, integrate it with CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, if I need to, just to justify it for the grant. But at the core of it is us reminding us in our body that has practices that we have to reintegrate and not always allow sort of the experts that we've classified to sell it back to us. But it's really just stuff we've always done, using music, using art, using community, sitting in circles, connected with nature, taking your shoes off and planting your feet, doing breathing exercises. We call it mindfulness now. We call it new age now, but a lot of it is just the things that our ancestors did to survive the traumas. But before that, to create civilizations. And I think the more we study those things and bring those back and to integrate that, infuse those into the therapeutic practices, it allows us another level of transformative possibilities than the coping and managing skills that we get just to get kids to go back to work, back to school, to be a more efficient cog in the system. But when I think about trauma-informed healing and those practices, they have to include culture. They have to think about what is our root and how to re-engage those things that have kept us alive and kept us thriving and kept us producing at the highest level for centuries before we were interrupted. But those things are still in us in ways that I think we can, still evoke.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, everybody that I work with, I try to help remove the stigma of mental health, and remove the stigma of what society has deemed, what being a man is. I can't tell you how many times I talk to my patients like, look, if you need to cry, go ahead and cry. Like, I'm not gonna see you as no punk. Like, less of a man because you're crying and breaking down. I see the pain that you're going through. And just allowing them to be able to get that out, like, to cry in front of another man and not feel judged, not feel put down, not feel belittled, things of that nature. And I can really see like just the weight being lifted and shifted off of their shoulders. Outside of that, just simply helping them with different coping skills, helping them with deep breathing techniques and things of that nature, helping them kind of reframe their thinking. I do like SOTA's activities with them, which helps them think about their different, like the situation that they're in and what the options are and the disadvantages and advantages are to that option. And once you go through all that process, well, what is the solution that you want to come up with? normally when you're not dealing with a whole lot of trauma, it's kind of easy to go through that process in your head. You don't have to sit down and write it down and things of that nature. But when you have so much trauma coming in at you from all levels, it's hard to think. It's really hard to think. And so just helping teaching them skills like that is very beneficial. And then outside of just my like one-on-one working with my clients, making sure that I can work with systems who are heavily impacting our young Black males. And so like with the Javi that I'm a part of, the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention, I sit on one of their committees, one for the engaging frontline workers, as well as for the reimagining law enforcement in the ED. And so we're actually currently working on creating flyers and stuff to be put into all the EDs across the nation so that individuals can know their rights. So when law enforcement comes in, they can't just, hey, give me your cell phone. Do you have a warrant for this? You can't just take my cell phone. And not only just from a law enforcement and a patient perspective, but also from a hospital perspective. Our nurses and doctors need to understand that law enforcement don't get to just get past HIPAA. They don't get to just come in and say, I'm law enforcement, I get to do what I want to do. No, if you don't have a warrant for this, guess what? The property is going to be locked up in this lockbox so that the patient can get this property. The only way you're getting this property is if you either get a written response from our patient or you bring in a search warrant. Otherwise, we're just not going to hand stuff over to you. So we're in a process of completing that right now. Hopefully that should be done within the next few months. And we'll start pitching it out to our individual hospitals who can help out with that. Another thing that we're doing, we have within our program, we have a peer support group. So we bring our clients together once a month and we can sit down, we break bread, we eat, we talk, we do activities together, but we really help them process what the healing looks like for them, whether they're, 2 weeks from being discharged from the hospital or 9 months from discharging from the hospital. And we let them kind of talk with each other and kind of express how their recovery has been going, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, how those things are going. We actually have power of exposure events. We had a paint night that we just did last month. In 2 months in July, we're going to a soccer game. We want to try to get people exposed to things outside of their neighborhood, outside of things, maybe even their comfort zone that they're not used to doing, so that they can see that, there is more to life than maybe what you've been seeing so far, and maybe open them up to different possibilities for themselves. And then as well as we also try to make sure that we're engaging with all of our medical staff. So we do training. All of our teammates will engage in different training. So when the new nurses and stuff come on board at our hospital, we're part of their orientation process. We do training to staff on different floors, talking about implicit bias and things of that nature, as well as when they have their trauma-informed care courses, we're able to bring one of our clients in to actually speak to those groups and get compensated for their time and for their expertise, speaking about their experience coming through our hospital and how our hospital can make changes to better suit our patients' needs and stuff like that. And then the last thing I'll say as well is that in my job, we also work with community agencies. And so Brother Aaron was able to hook us up with a group called Cut to the Chase, which is barbershop conversations where Black males, we just come in and it's probably, I'm gonna say close to 20 of us at a time. And we sit down and we talk about any and everything. We have a licensed therapist on board. We usually start off talking about health stuff, whether it be high blood pressure, diabetes, things of that nature. And then we talk about mental health stuff and things that we've grown up with and issues that we may be currently wrestling with, relationships and all that type stuff. And I invite my clients to come to that as well. So trying to make sure from every avenue we can get them all the support that we possibly can, and making sure that they see that we're not just telling them to do certain things. They can see that, hey, I'm doing these things too. I'm not just telling you to go get additional mental health support, and I'm not following through on my own word as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. We have a couple of great comments that I want to acknowledge. So we have from KB, it states that he's a cardiac ICU nurse and recently changed specialties 2 months ago to come over to psychiatry. I work on geriatric, primarily adult, child, adolescent units, and have heard some of the most disturbing, cruel, shamefully heartbreaking stories from his patients. I mean, I have been so shocked that people, including family, can have treated others. The lifetime effects of childhood trauma that I still see manifest daily is utterly bewildering to me. I have enrolled in school for a fall start to earn my DNP as a psych mental health nurse practitioner, and am honored to be in this so necessary conversation. Being from Chicago, also, I hear Dr. Obari even louder because I know the language and the environment intimately that he speaks of. Another great comment that I feel we have also was Dr. King, who spoke up about, Mr. Johnson. He says, yes, they try that all the time, showing up to the ICU floors and asking all kinds of questions. Law enforcement, hey, we need this lab sample, or like, oh, we got to go speak to this patient. And being nurses, we're like, okay, it's the police officer. I guess they have the right, they have the right things that they need. And, sometimes we don't stand in the way of that law enforcement because of that relationship, or for whatever reason. And so then the patient isn't aware, and a police officer walks in the room and starts interrogating, them in that moment. Mr. Johnson, I have a question. What exactly does your program implement to prevent reoccurrence of trauma from gunshots? The person says, I'm assuming the person admitted didn't ask to be shot. So I guess I'm asking, how does the program prevent someone from being shot?
So basically, we do our best to, like I said, come alongside just mentoring, and really when we create their case plans for them, this is like about, what are your dreams and goals in life? How do I help you, after you finding that identity, how do I help you with that purpose part? And so we get them enrolled in school, we get them employment. At times we can try to find through different partnerships, housing resources for them, getting them out of the environments that they're so used to, is allowing them to be in something, just totally foreign to them, and not be kind of, caught in a crossfire again, whether it was something that they were intentionally involved with or something that was just an accident. We want to try to make sure that we're broadening their horizons and giving them much more options. It may even be to leave Sacramento. Awesome. Maybe we have partners in the Bay Area, and I can be like, hey, I can suggest something out here for you. Or maybe it's just, hey, getting a fire back in their heart that, yeah, I do want to go back to school, and maybe they can go out of school for something. A lot of times it's not necessarily like there's a foolproof way to, if you do XYZ, then you won't get injured again. It's all about opening their mind up to the possibilities that they can be something greater than what their life has currently been. We want them to have the quality of life that they desire for themselves. First, we got to get them that desire back, because a lot of times that fire has been snuffed out. So once we can get that desire back, then we can help them reach the goals and dreams that they truly have for themselves.
Yeah. It's wild thinking about how many young people tell me to leave Chicago. I be in a prison too. I mean, I've been talking to the ones that's causing the chaos, and they say, "No, bro, you should get out of here." Like, I got kids. I got two boys. They're 11 and 8, and they tell me themselves like it's going to get worse out here. Like we ain't gonna stop. We try to do our best to try to divert them and give them other options, and they say you should leave this place as soon as you can. And the thing that's hard to experience, I be having to like bring in aspects of my life here in Chicago, because there's so many different versions of Chicago, right? You might see, you watch the news and you see a certain sort of a narrative, but I'm living in the same neighborhoods they living in. I'm right down the street from them, but I'm having a drum circle and they doing something else, and they walk right past the building where we in, and they're not clear on the ways in which these cities overlap and are sitting right on top of each other, but almost like an alternate reality kind of a situation. And then they get out from the trauma center or from the prison, and then go right back to the same activities, because that's how their world is shaped. Like they don't know no other option other than what they saw, what they enjoy, and they like it, and it's fun for them. So part of what I think has helped, and even in the work, and that doesn't work in trauma centers too, is to the exposure stuff you're talking about is so important. But like, I'm in the same Chicago, and my Chicago's full of art. We go to festivals. My kids be going to book clubs. Like, uh, I'm not. It's not impossible that I could get caught in the crossfire, but I've reduced my likelihood drastically because of the things I enjoy, the places that I go, the dramas I avoid, Somebody else driving over here just a little while ago. Somebody like cut me off, and he might have been mad about something I did, and he, rolled his window down, mean mugged me. And so in that moment, my manness is supposed to defend myself, and I'm supposed to go back and forth. I'm like, nah, bro, you got it, my bad. I will say my bad so quick to a man. Like, you don't know what this brother been through. You don't know what he got to prove. We got a lot of people that ain't got nothing to lose, and I got a lot to lose, right? And so I'll humble myself in a second. And part of that's just like just having something where you worth it, and then you see yourself making decisions to engage or navigate. And that's something that they can do. Like they have a power in how they change they movement, who they be with, where they go. All of that stuff increases their likelihood of accidentally being in the wrong place in the wrong time. But if you're at the jazz club, like if you're at the, you know what I'm saying, we had movies in the park, but there's certain safe zones that I be at. Where I don't worry about my kids getting shot. It happens. I'm not saying it's impossible, but like the gamble is much different if you're making deliberate decisions about how you move, even within the city, within a neighborhood that is so-called a violent neighborhood. I mean,
right. Yeah. I want to take these last several moments to ask if there are any final questions from the attendees. You can definitely come off mute and ask those questions right now.
Yeah, just raise your hand and we'll go ahead and we'll select you to speak.
Hey, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the conversation. I appreciate the time to listen, reflect, and to learn from this wonderful webinar we have here. I don't so much have a conversation, but more two things. Number one, I want to say thank you, and then I'm grateful for these kind of moments right here because they are so necessary. The fact that they are necessary and have been so is a staggering feat that many people who are not in this space can't really digest, so much to say. So everything that you all are saying, I hear you, but not only am I hearing you, I'm listening to you. It's two different things. I'm hearing you and I'm listening. I just reminiscing when I was in nursing school, University of Rochester, New York. I was a part of Rochester Black Nurse Association. And I was pretty much one of maybe two males in the entire program. But the other awesome women nurses were, attempting to run in June a men's mental health month in June. I couldn't have that. I needed to step in, and nobody knows how hard it is to be a Black man in America except the Black man in America, right? And it wasn't to slight them in any event, but it's a certain kind of conversation that a man may have with another man. First time I ever do anything like that, and it was amazing, amazing. The conversation started about physical health, but quickly shifted to mental health. So as I mentioned before, I'm a cardiac ICU nurse, but when I went to try to find a therapist for myself, I couldn't find a Black male therapist.
Right.
And after, I did find a therapist, I could find a bunch of Black women who may have been LCSWs, find a bunch of white people who were doctors or whatever. But after 24 years in the Marine Corps, I figured that if everybody is full, all the therapists I did find, everybody's full, not taking a new patient, then there's a need, right? As a Black man, I'm not the only Black man that want to talk to another Black man. There's a need. As a veteran, I know what the VA does and doesn't do. There's a need. So after coming to the ICU, I thought to myself, not everybody on the planet has access to healthcare. Those who do may only have a clinic. Not everybody has a hospital. Those who do have a hospital, not everybody is acute enough to go to an ICU. Those who do with ICUs, because there are multiple ICUs, may not come to the cardiac ICU I work at. However, I don't give a damn if you're from Paraguay, Japan, Atlanta, or Moscow. Nobody on the earth is immune to depression, to grief, to sorrow, to sadness. And I thought to myself, how can I be the change, right? I see all the providers that don't look like us. And in my psych unit, we have a max of 12 patients. If we're maxed out, I may have 8 to 9 people that look like me, but the providers don't. That's telling right there, right? And there is no freedom without medical freedom. And medical racism is a real thing, y'all. It's real. So I want to take this opportunity to say that you all have further solidified, encouraged, and or given me that nod to say, hey, I'm doing the right thing by switching over to psych to affect more people and pursuing this doctoral degree as a nurse practitioner for psychiatric mental health coming in the fall, because I want to be the change agent. I want to do my part. It just be a good human, right? I want to do something, do whatever I can to make it happen for somebody else, because while I still have activity of my arms, my limbs, and good and right mind, because we're all going to go into the hospital one day. We all go in that direction. I want to be able to just try something. So I just want to say thank you for this forum. Thank you for the platform, for all that you have said. And to everyone out here in the audience, I appreciate you all showing up here as well. And I hope that everybody gets something that they can take with them for themselves and give to others. Thank you again.
Appreciate you sharing that, bro.
Thanks.
Brother Chavez got a hand up.
First, I'd like to say thank you for, just giving insight to all of what you're doing and the different methods and everything to just improve the quality of life for those who have experienced those traumatic events. Just a little insight. Actually, I lost my older brother from gun violence. So
Sorry to hear that.
Very
yeah,
sorry to
he
hear that.
didn't have the opportunity to even, make it past that point and actually get into a program or something like that that probably could have helped him after the fact. But with that, for the people who actually like are committing the violence, so like, do you all like have thought about working with like juvenile delinquents or even the jail systems to try to talk to those who are even committing the crimes or even trying to, help with them? Because just due to the fact that they have committed those crimes, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is like people are so quick to write other people off, but still don't try to, like help them after the fact, after they did something, so heinous like that. So like, have you all like thought about even trying to give those people who are doing the shooting and everything kind of the somewhat help that they need? Because in full transparency, I mean, some of those people they don't get convicted and they still doing what they're doing. So I guess just to try to get it on both ends for those who are the victims and those who are doing it. Like, have y'all thought about trying to work with like just other organizations to try to get it on both sides?
Yeah, I'm in the juvenile detention center a couple days a week, for the very reason. And um, I don't know if it's unique to Chicago, but a lot of the population that's shooting and shot are the same. And we do a lot to try to help, but the help isn't just going in and talking to them. The help has to include resources, it has to include structural opportunities, it has to include stopping the disinvestment that's happening in their communities. So there's a limit that we can do, but we are doing what we can. And part of what brothers talking about around asking them questions about their purpose and their identity, giving them information. The curriculum that I do is designed for that young man in particular that's most likely to cause the violence. And I'm in the detention center, so they've already committed some crime. I'm careful about language like delinquents, because part of what we're talking about is the larger narrative about Black men where we are easy to see ourselves as criminals, where right now, hopefully today going forward, we can now say there's a convicted criminal who is also a president, and that changes the image of what you see when you see a delinquent, and that the puppeteers that create the conditions that cause the chaos, that pit the brothers against each other, that drop cases of guns off, that's leaving they getting fitting off somewhere. There's somebody orchestrating this, and those are the delinquents. Those are the criminals. Those are the most violent in the society. And so we have to be careful about painting the picture of sort of the petty crime, the community violence, the gun violence, and not looking at the architects of this thing and how violent they are. And that is part of the thing that gets internalized. And then, we so brilliant, we so bold, we so bad that if we see ourselves as savage, then we create the most savagery that you could ever imagine. But if we could redirect them and show them who they are, the shooters and the shot, the innocent bystanders, everybody in the community needs to be reoriented. The school's not going to do it. They can't. Um, we have to find ways to go into these places wherever they are and teach who we are, where we came from, what we possible, what our purpose is, and that is the thing that I think is the most likely violence prevention program that we could do. But nobody's funding that at the level that it needs to be. All the money's going to the police. We think safety, you think control and domination. You think get rid of them. And so we have to use language that encourages our young Black men not being a problem to solve, but a human to invest in. And then once you have that frame, then so many things come of that that prevent, you know what I'm saying, the terrible thing that happened to your brother. I hate what happened to your brother. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. And I have to go into a detention center full of children and remind them that they got dealt a bad hand on purpose so that they ended up here because somebody is profiting off of their body in this moment and they fell for an okie doke that we can reverse, but it wasn't completely their fault up until they got a new awareness. Because they've been children their whole life. They're 15, 16. I've had a 13-year-old one time. My son's about to turn 12. I know what a kid is. These are kids who were dealt a bad hand, who were under attack, who did not get what they needed, and unfortunately, that manifested in lots of violence, and there's lots of victims of that. But we lose the shooters, and we lose all of them unless we as men figure out a way to get more organized and do the kind of work that Sherry is talking about, which is to reorient, to redirect, and to instill in something a care and a value. And that has to be what the wellness is. That's what the trauma-informed care needs to look like. And again, we the ones that just got to create those kind of programs and be invested in making sure they're effective.
Yeah. For my part, my specific program at UC Davis, we don't do any of that, but I myself in my personal time, I do. I've been working both in the streets as well as in prisons and detention centers with adults as well as juveniles for over the last 20 years. I still mentor individuals who have gotten out. I actually have one of my juvenile mentors who actually just got out for a murder that he spent probably about 8 years in jail for. He just recently got out and we still connect, helping him navigate his employment search. He's actually started his own car business now. So we're talking about entrepreneurship and things of that nature. And so I'm always trying to make sure that I'm constantly trying to just again, open the eyes up to possibilities that are ahead. I think again, as we really get to thinking about this identity stuff, individuals have to understand what life is even worth to them. I know, Doc, you said earlier you was talking about somebody cutting you off or something like that and flicking you off. And yeah, we immediately want to say something back. I can't tell you how many times we walked into a hospital room and we're like, well, how'd you get shot 6 times? Oh, this person cut me off. And so I chased them down the interstate and then they shot at me. And I'm sitting here like, and I'm like, do you understand? Like, maybe you don't feel like you have something to live for, but like all I can ever think of, I got a wife and I got 3 kids at home. They need me. I don't care. Flicking me off is not gonna hurt me.
Right.
Even when I have incidents with law enforcement, like I got to get home to my family. We can call it looking like a punk. I'm a yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, as much as I need to get home to see my family and live to see another day. We can deal with the other stuff later on. But if I act out and try to prove that, no, you're not going to bully me in this situation, I'm going to be the next person who, hey, somebody say his name. You know what? That's all fine and dandy, but that's not going to help feed my kids. That's not going to help deal with the trauma with my wife and stuff if I'm gone and now she doesn't have the support system there for her. So I always try to make individuals understand that your decisions have a consequence to it, good or bad. And the only person decisions that you can actually worry about are your own. You can't control nobody else. And so you got to think about every decision that you make, and you got to think about, again, the environment that you put yourself in, the people you keep in your circle, because the 5 closest people to you, that's going to be who you end up being. And if you don't like those 5 people, that means you probably need to find a new circle.
Yeah.
I think, gentlemen, one important thing is, so a lot of us on here are nurses. And just so, you know, because I know we speak very eloquently and we, as behavioral health practitioners and individuals who work in the community, but trauma-informed care is really not rocket science in a lot of ways. Trauma-informed care is kind, being compassionate to our clients and to our patients, being client-centered, and being ready to implement this paradigm shift, because we're basically shifting from this kind of like old way of doing things, of seeing patients and seeing clients or seeing individuals through this lens to a very new, and I wouldn't say through a humanistic lens. And I don't know that that is always supported by capitalism. And basically the last part I feel like is that trauma-informed care, the trauma-informed care that one provides as a healthcare practitioner needs to be strength-based, identifying the strengths of the individual versus the flaws and the problems of the individuals. I have a question from TJ. And so how do we provide supports and outlets for Black men who are outcast to the Black community, such as nerds, those who are into Afropunk, those who are identified with having a disability, those in the LGBTQ plus community, or practices non-monogamy, etc., all of those isms. While I am finding supports as a Black, queer, genderqueer man myself, sometimes the inner fear of being autistic or nerdy gets in the way. I don't want my peers in the Black community already to see me as more weird simply for asking for acceptance and support. So what are your thoughts about how do we provide supports and outlets for Black men who are feeling as though they are outcast to the Black community?
Oh, that's a good question. I have found that when you are genuinely seeking something, that there's also an energetic sort of universal response to that that will attract you to that which you seek. Um, I think that there needs to be effort beyond an idea to manifest that relationship. But it has been my experience that when you are looking for something, if it's community, if it's camaraderie, if it's an outlet, that there's usually someone else looking for that too. And then once you find that person and connect on that thing, then you can create the community that can provide that space that gives you what you need. And you've identified specific connecting points. And you might not always get, because you know, if somebody's really unique, and you know, some of us are like a mix of a bunch of different things. And so I might get fed in my drumming from the other drummers and then get fed. But I also love Annie DeFranco. I also listen to Fiona Apple. I don't talk about that with my drumming friends. But I might have several circles where I get fed the different aspects of myself from different communities that are connecting for a thing that I'm interested in. And so, you know, anime used to be like fringe and nerdy, but now it's cool. Like now it's popular. But whether it's cool or not in somebody else's eyes, there's somebody else that is interested in that thing you're interested in. It could be the smallest, you're saying weird. I don't even like use weird. It could just a unique perspective that you have, a unique desire that you have. There's always somebody else that cares about, that's interested in that thing. The internet has made it possible to connect with so many different types of people and find community in so many different type of ways. They might not be in your city, particularly if you're in a smaller city. If you're in a larger city, there's lots of places where you can find those niches, those small sort of unique communities. You just got to get out and look for them. The question is asked, how can we create that? And I think that we can't always wait for the whoever this ominous we is to create that thing that you need. Some of it just means that we got to use our own agency to put it out there, attract it, go find other people that are already doing that, and then be honest about the fact that sometimes some place might meet your need around this thing, and some other place might meet your need around another thing, and it just takes work to fulfill yourself in all the different ways that I think that sometimes people show up.
Yeah, I think I would just echo that. You just have to create it, and you have to figure out who your sometimes in my circles we call it the avatar. You figure out who your avatar is and you speak to that avatar, and you figure out, who that demographic is that you're trying to reach. And, just like Doc said, like, if you like it, there's probably a million other people on this planet that like it. But maybe you'll be the first one to actually step out and be like, hey, this is what I like. Who all likes what I like? Join on board, and you can watch that thing grow. But it's going to be up to you to kind of get it started. Because if we sitting here and waiting on an institution or for somebody else to do it, that need will never get fulfilled. So.
And we have a hand. And we're going to be close out. Dr. King, I think is.
Yeah, asked him. Dr. Lucian, did you want to unmute?
Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I was having trouble trying to unmute you. First of all, just thank you, Aaron, and everybody for your presentation. I'm actually a pediatrician at UC Davis, so I grew up in Sacramento. Thanks Chavez for his program and the success that he had. And the main thing I think is what he was sharing about really giving these young people who are involved and come into contact with them a vision. It reminds me of one of my favorite scriptures where it says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so I think the success of his program is really tied to the fact that those people who come in contact with him are left and given the opportunity to have a vision that is different than the direction that they were going before.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So in closing, gentlemen, thank you again so much for the wealth of information that you provided to all of us. And definitely you have a huge hand clap from all of us for the work that you do and continue to do, remain strengthened in that. I would ask that if there's anything that you would like to add to close out tonight's event.
I just thank
I just
everybody.
say thanks for the space, man. Yeah, appreciate the convening. Appreciate y'all. You know what I'm saying? It's late. I know everybody had long days, so y'all still find this important. Is encouraging to me. So great. Thank y'all for organizing it. Thank y'all for inviting me. Thank you, Brother Chavez, for your work too. Hope we get to stay connected, and all of y'all. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully we find ways to reach out and strengthen our networks. I think that's part of what the healing requires, is build a community. So if anybody on Instagram, please, follow and keep up. If y'all got work y'all want to do, if y'all got products that y'all selling, please, I would just love to, in this moment with the people that are here right now, find ways to tangibly support the things that people are working on. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to make that happen.
Yeah, I just echo that. Thank you for allowing me on this platform to share with everybody. Thank you all for your time. I pray that, there was something that I said that was able to impact you and able to resonate with you. And then I also leave my contact in the group chat just for anybody who wants to follow up at any time. So appreciate y'all. Thank you a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, back to you, Dr. King.
Thank you everyone for attending tonight. This was a great conversation. It was just such a busy chat. I really appreciate all three of you, especially Dr. Willis, for being able to steer and moderate and really bring in the knowledge that you have and share it with everyone in the room. We hope to have more events like this. We would definitely, oh wait, we got a hand. Let me see what this is about. Go ahead, KB.
Thank you. My question specifically was for Dr. Obari. I've already been following him for a minute on Instagram and get his emails and everything like that. I just wanted to find out, do you do any mentoring?
Through
To
the
speak for
curriculum,
myself.
I do. Reach out. We can figure them out. Just give me a call. Send me emails.
I see you.
If there's any way I can support, I'm always trying to find out that can be.
Okay, if you check it, I'll shoot you a message on Instagram right now.
For sure. Love it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. It's good that we're connected people. All right, and so I just invite you all to come to some of our next events as we get to roll out. We are preparing for the National Black Nurses Association Conference.